Hey, Live on Purpose parents, I've got 5 tips for you today about what to do when kids don't listen. Does that ever happen to you? Children are almost like little emotional mirrors. Like whatever you're feeling starts to show up in your kids. Think about it. When you're having a bad day, what do you notice is going on with the kiddos? They're bouncing off the walls and they don't seem to be listening. The first tip that I have for you about what to do when kids are not listening is to regulate your own emotions. Now, this is easier said than done. We've got other videos here on the channel that can help you with that. Here's a quick tip. Breathe. Psychologically, your brain gets all tied up in what we call the fight or flight response. And if your kids are misbehaving, or if they're a little hyperactive, or if they're not listening to you, that actually triggers a little thing in your brain that has chemicals flowing through your bloodstream that prepare your body to do one of 2 things: fight or get out of there. Now, honestly, as a mom, which one's going to help the situation more? If you fight or run away, see, either one's going to make it worse. We got to get a hold of that marvelous mind of yours first. The quickest way I know to reverse that chemistry and get yourself back in thinking mode is to take some slow, deep breaths. And honestly, if your kid's not listening to you, most of the time it's not urgent. It's more important than it is urgent. Are you with me on that? So you can take just a moment to take a breath. And I recommend that you breathe in through the nose, hold for just a moment, and then out nice and slow through the mouth. And purse your lips a little bit to restrict that flow. What this does is it changes the physiology that's feeding the oxygen to your brain. Anyway, it works really well, especially if you'll practice breathing occasionally when you're not upset. Then when you are in one of those moments, you can reclaim your brain. You have to regulate your own emotion in this moment so that we don't trigger more problems or misbehavior with the kids. That's tip number 1. Tip number 2. Now, if you've been watching the channel for a while, you've already heard this, and I know I've told you this before. What's your job as a parent? Okay, I can almost hear you answering. It's to love them, no matter what, and even if. That's your job. Tip number 2 is to remember your job. Your job is to love them, no matter what, and even if. Even if they're not listening to me, Dr. Paul? Yeah. Maybe especially then. It's easy to love kids who are listening to you and behaving all the time. Your job is to love them no matter what and even if. That's your job. Now here's something that helps. If you know that your job is not to make sure that they listen to you, do you think you're going to feel a little less frustrated in the moment when they're not listening to you? I think so. You're no longer in that threat stage that triggers the fight or flight that we talked about in tip number 1. When your job is to love them no matter what and even if, can you love them if they're not listening to you? Yes, you can. Can you love them if they're misbehaving? Yes, you can. Can you love them if they're not treating each other very nicely? Yes, you can. See, you've got your job covered, and that calms you down as a parent and puts us in position to do some of the other things that are going to help. So let's go to tip number 3. Make sure you have their attention. Kids are attending to all kinds of things all the time. They'll be looking at this for a minute, and then they'll be distracted by that over there. And they're all over the place because their little minds are so active. They're constantly observing and monitoring and tracking everything that's going on. Your voice sometimes is background noise. It's like wah, wah, wah. Like the Charlie Brown adults, right? They hear some noise, but it's not very interesting to them. You have to have their attention. So get in front of their face. Move yourself to a position where you can get right in their face so that they can see you. If they're playing with something or watching something else, do what you can to eliminate that distraction so that you got some contact here. Okay? Now, this varies for different ages and stages of development. A teenager, for example, you're going to get their attention a little differently than you would a toddler. But if it's a toddler, you want to get down on their level, okay? Not so that you're up here towering over them, but get down on their level where you can get some eye contact and make sure that you have their attention. You want to use language that they can understand and words that they understand, which leads us right into tip number 4. Speak very clearly. Once you have their attention, speak very clearly in language that is on their level, that they understand. And if you want them to do several things, you probably don't want to give them an instruction that includes multiple steps, especially for little kids. See if you can get them to focus in on what the first step would be. Okay, sweetie, I want you to go into the bedroom so that we can get ready for bed. Now, in some other videos, I've suggested ways to enforce that too. But all we're talking about right now is that initial communication. Use language that is clear to them and that is consistent with their level of development. Now, I promised you 5 steps, right? Here's number 5. Let consequences and empathy do the teaching. What we're trying to get away from here is the old 3 R's of parenting. You probably remember these. Rant, rave, and rescue. This is where we bawl them out and then we bail them out. We don't want to go there. All that teaches our kids is that mom is a hothead. All I have to do is put up with a little bit of noise and then I'm going to get what I want. No, let's get away from the rant, rave, and rescue and instead go to consequences and empathy. Now, consequences, we've talked about those in a lot of other videos. If you want a really great resource, go to the Positive Parenting playlist here on the channel, and you'll find dozens of videos there, a lot of which have some very specific consequences attached to them. So the consequences are really important primarily because of your child's level of development. But even with older children, sometimes they get in a stage of thinking that has them responding better to consequences than anything else. Now, there's another part to this, empathy. Empathy has 2 important parts. It means that you understand and care. Those 2 parts, okay? Understand and care how someone else feels. So don't be this cold, uncaring parent who's just always, angry or shaking your finger at them. Have some empathy. Now, you're going to let the consequences hold, okay? Don't bail them out from their consequences. Your kids can handle whatever consequences they just earned for misbehavior or for not listening to you. Let the consequences fall. And then practice empathy, where you connect with that child on an emotional level, okay? Because they're going to be upset, right? They're not happy about what just happened. So you connect with that. Oh, sweetie, I know this is really tough for you, huh? And it's not in a sarcastic or an I told you so sort of a way. It's genuine. Oh, sweetie, this is really tough for you, isn't it? I know. But I know that you're really smart and you're going to figure this out. Okay, see, that's connecting with empathy. And it also empowers that child to make some better choices in the future, including the one about whether they're going to listen to you or not. Okay, mom, dad, you've got this. Parenting is a challenging thing. That's why we've got all these resources here on the channel where you can connect to the Positive Parenting playlist. And also, if you haven't checked it out yet, please visit parentingpowerup.com. We've got a lot of resources there that you can connect to, including a free sample. And if you're picking us up on LinkedIn, make sure that you follow us. We're going to be posting new videos every day.